What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kershaw Emerson CQC 11K. Now, real quick here, this is the older version that's in HCR 14 MOV. This version is discontinued. As of right now, you can get the upgraded version of this knife, which is identical, except that it's using D2 steel. So, a lot of you know that I'm not a huge fan of HCR 14 MOV, but because this model is discontinued and I am a fan of D2, and that's the one you can get, we're going to proceed with this review as if it were using D2 steel. I've used plenty of knives in HCR 14, plenty of Kershaw knives in HCR 14. I've also used plenty of Kershaw knives in D2 and other D2 knives in general, right? So it's one of those things where it's safe for me to assume how the upgraded version of this knife is going to perform. This review is going to consist of my thoughts on the design and the model and the fit and finish, right, etc. And then at the end, we'll talk about value and price. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. You can find a link for my Patreon right down in the description. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. You'll also be able to find links for this knife right down in the description, as well as Kershaw knives in general. So if you'd like to check this out or other Kershaw knives, feel free to use those links down there. Let's go ahead and get a measurement real quick. The CQC 11K. Overall length coming in at 8.5 inches, maybe a little bit longer, about 8.6 inches overall. Blade length on this guy coming in at about 3.6 inches. Cutting edge coming in at about, just shy of 3.5, about 3.4. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and its little brother, the Ontario Rat Model 2. This is roughly exactly the same size as the Rat 1, even though the Rat 1's looking a little shorter because of the angle here. Definitely larger than the Rat 2. This is a large knife, not just by length, but this the shape, the profile of the handle, the profile of the blade, right? It's a big knife. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3? You can see here it is absolutely, gosh darn it, had a Para 3 upside down. It's definitely larger than both. And last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and its little brother, the Mini Griptilian. Once again, this knife is definitely larger than both. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. Normally, I'd get out my tools, which are down in the description and extremely recommendable and inexpensive, but this isn't using Torx. No, like the actual Emerson knives, it's got a flathead pivot and a Phillips head screws. Now, this is funny to me. People get really bent out of shape about that for some reason. And people complain about that with Hinderer. They're like, why isn't the pivot Torx? Why is it a flathead? That's the most common tool in existence. The most common tool. It's like within 10 feet of me at any moment, no matter where I am in the universe, there is a flathead screwdriver within 10 feet of me. So if you need to adjust the pivot while you're using it, right, you're out, whatever, you can do that. And you know what? If you don't have a flathead screwdriver, you can probably use the edge of a credit card or a coin, right? So while it might not be the prettiest thing in the world, the advantages of it being what it is far outweigh whether or not it's pretty. Almost the same thing with the handle hardware. Is the handle hardware as pretty as a Torx head? No, but I just don't understand why people complain. It cracks me up. I mean, the only thing that kind of bothers me is that they're not all the same. Like, if you're going to do Phillips on the body screws, do Phillips on the pivot. If you're going to do flathead on the pivot, do flathead on the body screws, right? Or make them all Torx. Why we have flathead and Phillips, I don't know, but we do. We also have Phillips head on the pocket clip screw, so that's great, right? If you really wanted to, you probably could switch out the handle screws for Torx, but the way that it stands, we have one more screw than I normally prefer. I normally just prefer to see two on each side, but that's fine. It's not a big deal, and they are Phillips heads. That means that this knife factually will be easy to adjust and easy to disassemble. That coupled with the fact that this is just a steel frame lock, right? So I guess if you really feel like you need to be bent out of shape about how that looks or what they are, then leave me a lengthy comment about how frustrated you are. But for people who are planning to pick this up and use it, yeah, you have the convenience of Phillips and flathead. So there you go. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. Thickness of this knife up against the Spyderco Para 3. This knife is really not all that thick. In fact, it's surprisingly thin. It's actually thinner than the Spyderco Para 3. Now, length and height, that's a different story. Emerson knives generally, and again, this isn't an actual Emerson. It's a collaboration between Emerson and Kershaw. Generally speaking, a lot of the CQC series tend to have very pronounced lines. There's stuff all over the place. This has the Wave, which kind of looks like a unicorn horn, and it's definitely something that sticks up out of the... But it's intended to catch the lip of your palm. I know what it's intended to do. We're going to talk about that. I know exactly what it does. It makes... All the little lines and things on this knife make it very tall. In fact, it's actually taller by quite a bit than the PM2. So in the pocket, factually, this is going to be a more cumbersome object than what I would consider to be your average pocket knife. Why are you up here? Definitely longer than both the PM2 and Para 3, and definitely taller, though not quite as thick. There's a lot of steel on this guy because we're looking at a steel frame lock. But I don't think the blade stock thickness is all that intense. I'm going to guess that's 115 to 120 thousandths. Okay, there we go, 120 thousandths. All right. There's just a lot of knife here. We're looking at G10. It is G10. You can see that it's fibrous in here, right? Then we have a steel liner, and then we have a steel part of the frame lock. I'm going to guess that this knife weighs 5 ounces. There we go. Oh, more than that. 5.82 ounces. Oh, my gosh. That is heavy. It's not really that heavy, guys. 6 ounces. This is within the normal territory that I like to carry, right? I mean, it depends on who you are and what type of pants you like to wear. If you like teeny tiny knives and you like teeny tiny pants, you probably aren't going to like this, right? If you're wearing jeans and you carry a full-size knife, you're probably like me. It's not really going to bother you. It's dimensions, right? It's the big hooks and the big curves and the big lumps and all that. That's what's going to bother some people, right? But it's not the worst that I've ever experienced. It's not really that bad. Just keep it in mind, right? It depends on what you like to carry. So think about that before you pick something like this up. This knife is running on... Did we finish everything there? Hardware check, we don't need to look on the inside. I suppose we can look on the inside. You can get my flashlight down in the description. So there you go. You can see it's not milled out, which is what's contributing to the weight. Absolutely. So let's get this out of the way real quick. Let's talk about action. So this is using a thumb disc. I don't necessarily dislike thumb discs. I just find that they're less... They don't work quite as well as a thumb stud opener, right? They just don't. And it depends on the positioning. It depends on the design. Here's a design that is exactly kind of what I'm talking about. Now, you will adapt to it. Owners of knives will be like, owners of this knife will be like, I adapted. I can flick it out, and, I can do it with my toes. All right. That's weird. But, yeah, you'll adapt to it. You will. I don't find that the thumb discs are as convenient as thumb studs, especially when they're so far away from the natural. Like, this is where my thumb wants to be, right here. You get it out here, and it feels weird, and the leverage and pressure. You can get it, sure, but this is an exposed frame lock as well. It's also, you really have to, you got to keep your fingers over here, right? You can also reverse flick it if you want to. It's not... there's also a little bit of extra tension because there's not... This is running on phosphor bronze. Is it phosphor bronze and nylon? Sometimes with... Yeah, it's actually nylon. Sorry, it's nylon. So not quite as smooth as a knife on bearings, but that's fine. It's no big deal considering the price point and what this is. I like phosphor bronze better than nylon. Phosphor bronze would also be, the best choice, I think, for dirt and debris. Nylon's okay. It's still better than bearings, but bearings has the better action, blah, blah, blah. The action's not incredible on this. But what about the Wave? Yeah. You can put this knife in your pocket, and as you pull it, the Wave will catch the seam of your pants and deploy the knife. Honestly, that's kind of neat. The first time I played with one of these, I did what everybody does. I tried it, and I went, oh, cool, and it catches your pants and it deploys it. Technically, knives with the Emerson Wave deploy faster than any knives on the planet. Yes, even automatic knives, because if you think about it, you got to pull the knife all the way out of your pocket first and then deploy it, right? With Emerson knives, or with knives that use a wave feature like this, you can pull the knife from your pocket, and as it's being pulled, it deploys. So you are ready. You are ready to go 0.000462 seconds faster than somebody who doesn't have a knife with the Emerson Wave feature. Okay, so for me and 99% of people, 99.9999999% of the time, that isn't going to make any bit of difference. Now, I know that the self-defense community is going to jump on me and be like, hey, in some situations, that could mean the difference between life and death if the exact circumstance calls for you to, if this is all you have, you realize you're being attacked in the moment, right? Someone's already coming at you with a pipe or a rubber duck or whatever it is that they're attacking you with, right? Then in that moment, perhaps the speed at which you decide to reach for the item, right? Let's, of course, assume that you do grab it, you've got a hold of it, and then you pull, and it does actually catch the seam of your pocket and manage to deploy it. Just in that split second where it really matters, right? They've jumped off of the scaffolding and are bringing the rubber duck down on your head, right? And you you deploy it in that moment and are able to defend yourself then. Okay, then I guess that it did matter. And while I am joking about this, right, I'm making light of it, I mean, okay, I get it. I do get it. I'm sure there is a circumstance where that feature has actually saved somebody, right? And who's to say that it couldn't again in the future, right? For any individual person. But that's just not what happened. That's a very specific circumstance. And it is neat and it does work. I don't quite want to call it a gimmick. It's there, right? And so, yeah, I mean, if that kind of thing is important to you and you're wondering, does it work? I don't care about how unlikely it is, Metal Complex, with all your jokes and your BS. I want to know if it works. Yes, it does. It does work. So if that's your thing and you care about that, then yeah, it's a reliable system and it's designed well. The problem is for me, is it just makes the thing so tall and wide, right? I mean, I don't know that what I'm getting in terms of potential deployment speed in that specific scenario, right? The trade-off is that the thing has to be so tall right here, and it's just weird, Now they do, obviously Emerson has made other knives that have that feature, and the design, the overall design yields a shorter, like in terms of height of the blade this way, it's shorter, right? I get that. But on this specific model, I just don't want it there. I want it like this, right? Because this is using a thumb disc, so much of the cutting edge is sacrificed. I mean, obviously you can still cut at an angle, right? But if I'm going to cut straight down into cardboard, there's no choking up on it up here. That's not safe. This is how far away I am from the cutting edge, right? So if you're carrying this knife and using it for general ADC stuff, which is the vast majority of what this knife is going to be used for, and pretty much all folding knives, right? Yeah, you're super, it's way back here. Gotta, do this, choke way up on it, right? This part of the cutting edge is useless if you're going to cut straight down. So, okay, it is what it is. These thumb disc things are kind of neat because you can take them off and switch them out for custom-made ones and add a little character to your knife. And I do like stuff like that. That's fun to do things. This is actually, this doesn't look or feel like G10, but it definitely is. By the way, all the lines and everything are nicely knocked down here. There's no sharpness. The jimping isn't very aggressive, but it's functional, which is great. There's really just one position to hold this in. I mean, I have normal-sized hands, right? I can definitely get a full grip on this guy. Not much moving around. Maybe a little bit, but this is basically how you're going to hold it. I don't like being confined into one position, but the one position that you are meant to hold this knife in is very comfortable. I'll admit that. And that ramp is a nice place to rest your thumb. I am locked in. As much crap as I've given this design for the unicorn horn here, it is very comfortable. I'll admit that. It's super comfortable. I mean, if I really need to use this knife for a long period of time and go to work with it and hold on, I'm not going to drop it. I feel secure, and it gives me a good feeling of confidence in hand, right? If I needed to beat on this thing, yeah, absolutely. The lines lock you in, and nothing is super aggressive. I'm feeling the clip a little bit. The clip hangs really low on this guy. Oh my God. I feel the clip a little bit, but okay. It's a 3-hole clip. There's lots of custom clips out there. There's lots of clips that should fit this. Generally speaking, I believe ProTech and Benchmade knives, and along with Emerson and Emerson Kershaw collabs, all share the exact same threads and hole spacing. So there should be lots of clips that you can get. Unfortunately, the clip that comes with this knife is, for whatever reason, is positioned so low. Maybe that has to do with... No, it couldn't have to do with how this... Somebody will make an argument for that. Well, it's the exact angle and the distance between here and the unicorn hook and how it connects with your pants. Well, then that assumes that there's a generic exact thickness of pocket seam that's designed, that this is meant to sync up. Like, no, I don't. If that's your argument, no, I'm sorry, I don't believe. This pocket clip is needlessly shallow. That makes no sense. Why? To make room for this screw and this lanyard hole that has to be just ever so... This lanyard hole needs to be over here, much higher. It doesn't need to be right here. This screw could just be back here. You could move the lanyard hole up a little bit, put the screw right here, and then move the pocket clip way to the top, or so it carries like a normal... This is so weird, having this much of the knife sticking up out of your pocket. Will it function? Yes. It looks funny. The pocket clip looks funny. It's really small and dinky, and it's so shallow. I don't get it. So I've heard some people say that shallow clips are better for self-defense. Okay. For everybody else, which it's in every other circumstance, which is basically all the time and almost everybody, the position of this clip just doesn't make any sense. It's so weird. Okay. But it does function, right? It's fine. It's got a little bit of a bill. It will keep the knife in your pocket, which is, for the most part, that's what you want from your pocket clip. It's just so frustrating. The position of it is so weird. Why are these gaps so large? I don't like... Does that cause an issue with lockup? No, not really, but it sure is ugly when there's a position. Listen, just so you guys know, I like Kershaw. I like High USA. They make a lot of knives that I love. Absolutely. Something I see that doesn't look good, and it's usually their knives that are made in China. If you didn't know, not all Kershaw knives are made in China, but this one is made in China. Usually, the Kershaw knives that are made in China, when they're frame locks, have these gigantic, ugly Marianas Trench gaps in them. I guess you could say, well, it leaves an open space for debris to get on the face of the blade and ultimately into the pivot. I don't know if that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It just doesn't look good, right? Normal frame locks, honestly, the gap should be nowhere near that. Let me give you guys an example. I'll get out my own hinder. Now, I know people are going to be like, you're compared to a knife that costs way more. Listen, just for convenience, I'm using the hinderer, but most frame locks, regardless of how much they cost, look like this. The gaps are much thinner, right? This is... Why? Why does it look like that, right? It's ugly. That's, as a nitpicky reviewer, I'm just being nitpicky. It just doesn't look good. Fit and finish otherwise is actually pretty good, though. Honestly, fit and finish on the whole is great. I really don't have an issue with it. The knife does lock up absolutely solid. I got no issues with that. I just think that the gaps are ugly. This is a tumbled blade. It's obviously been used. I'm not going to judge it too hard for some of these. They're basically just use blemishes and discoloration from use. HCR it's supposed to be stainless, but for whatever reason it patinas like crazy. Sorry if you got a little buzz there. Yeah, the tumbling looks okay. The edge... the final cutting bevel is a little bit wonky, which is honestly what you can expect from some... I'm not going to say just Kershaw knives that are from China. Like, knives in general in this price range are kind of going to get some wonkiness. There is no sharpening choil, so be aware of that. There's a whole bunch of stuff all over the blade. It says Emerson knife design trademark, and then the Emerson logo, and then on this side it says Kershaw 6031, Kai, ATR 14 MOV, and China. We are ignoring once again that this is ATR 14 MOV because this version of the knife is discontinued and the new D2 version is available. I'd love to tell you that, that there might be some fit and finish updates with the D2 version. I don't know. Perhaps maybe their final edge bevels are a little bit better on their newer versions, right? But literally everything else, the position of the pocket clip, everything is exactly the same between the two knives, except for it's using D2. So we're pretending that this one is D2 because that's going to be more beneficial information for people looking to pick this knife up. The action is, while it's not ultra smooth like bearings, I mean, it is consistent. I mean, it's not an ugly action or anything like that. It's about what you'd expect for nylon. And once you adapt to the positioning, of your thumbs when you're engaging this little thumb disc thing, I think you'll be just fine. If you do decide that you need to use that, like if you decide you want to use that unicorn horn to deploy your knife every time you cut open a bag of chips, then you can, and it will work. Most of the time, the easiest way to deploy it is simply to place your thumb under that disc and just wheel it out slowly. I know that's not fun and it's not cool and it's not tactical, right? But that's kind of nonsense, right? I mean, if the thumb studs are positioned correctly, then you get to do this every single time, right? This is a simple thumb stud on a simple, inexpensive knife, right? This knife actually costs less than this guy, and it is substantially easier to deploy, right? Is it faster than the unicorn horn? No, but, out of 1,000 times deploying this knife, I couldn't imagine even one scenario where I really would need to use the horn, right? Or the wave. I know I'm supposed to call it the wave. It just looks like a unicorn horn. That's what this looks like. It looks like a horse face with a unicorn horn. Sorry if you can't unsee that anymore. That's what it looks like. Normal deployment with a knife, the most comfortable and easiest way to do that is just to do this, right? If I really need to fire it out, I'm going to miss. It's kind of inconvenient, right? So that's kind of a bummer. The rest of the knife on this side, I mean, there's not really much going on here. We just have a blasted frame, and yeah, that's about it. The knife is centered, which is great because this is a user Kershaw knife that is from China, and I haven't always seen perfect centering on those, but that's great. And like I said, the lockup is definitely solid, and there is no lock stick at all. So that's great. Nice pillar construction. It's going to be easy to clean out, right? So what does this knife come in at? Well, the old ATR 14 MOV versions of this knife came in at like 30, I think it was a sale that brought them down to $30. I think they were probably 40, right? Maybe they were more, maybe they were 50. The D2 versions of this knife, the currently available versions of this knife, like if you use the link right down in the description, it's going to take you to a listing that runs about $52. That's generally what you're going to see. D2, G10, steel frame lock. As far as the construction and fit and finish on this thing go, they're great. I don't really have a problem with it. And the price for the materials that you're getting is fairly on par, I mean, yeah, D2 is kind of okay, we've seen enough of it, right? There's a bajillion steel frame locks out there. Like every other knife in existence uses G10, right? And this is about what you can expect for fit and finish in this territory, perhaps being overshadowed by companies like Civivi, right? The main issues with this knife are just the dimensions, right? The dimensions are kind of weird. The access to this thumb disc is a little bit weird, right? You're quite a ways from the cutting edge. The pocket clip position makes no sense whatsoever. And there's a big ugly gap for the frame lock, right? Okay, Complex, but functionally, is this a dependable tool? It is. There's just a lot of unnecessary and weird all over this thing, right? We didn't really talk about the cutting edge. It is, this is actually a decently thin hollow grind, right? Out at the edge. It is going to cut well. This from here on out, use that for anything in whatever angle, it's going to do that. I think this knife will absolutely stand up to what you throw at it. I think that it'll be just fine. I think it's going to be a little bit awkward and big and clunky for a lot of people. If you really like Emerson knives, seriously, like if you really like Emerson knives and you don't want to break the bank, I think the D2 version of this is going to be okay. This is made well, and I think it probably is dependable. I just think versus everything else out there in today's knife world, that's so much more convenient, and all these little tiny silly little things are thought out better. There's just a lot of better stuff out there for the money. So people who decide to pick this up, right, if you're looking at this and you can overlook my nitpicks and you're like, I like how Emerson knives look, are you going to be happy with it? Yeah, I think you will. But I think that percentage of people, I think, is so small. Honestly, I think I'm going to pass on the recommendation on this one. I think there's so much in terms of like a better, I think there are so many plentiful, good designs in this territory, convenient designs for EDC in this territory are so plentiful right now. The vast majority of people probably can overlook this. It's good. It's fine. It's just not going to be for most people. Does that make sense? Gosh. Hope I didn't upset the Emerson crowd. It's all right. Maybe there is an Emerson knife out there that would appeal to me. I'll be honest with you. Emerson's aesthetics have never really been for me. I've heard mixed things about them. I don't really judge until I've handled it, right? What I'm handling here is a Chinese Kershaw Emerson collaboration, right? Maybe there are some other collabs out there that I would like better. Maybe I would like the actual Emersons better. Maybe just specific designs. I don't know. This isn't anything specifically against Emerson. This particular model is not for me, and I think it's not going to be for most people. I hope that that's fair. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's review. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, or at least found it mildly entertaining, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out, and if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.